Michigan has a problem with whippets. Brought to the front of people's minds after that gigantic fire and explosion in Clinton Township, Michigan has passed new laws to begin to deal with the personal dangers of inhaling nitrous oxide, as well as to the community by those who sell them. This is an important issue in the city of Detroit, the Metro Detroit region, and the state. On your Daily Detroit for Wednesday, April 10th, 2024, we unpack this event, the dangers, the misconceptions, and what a local group is trying to do to get tens of thousands of left-behind empty canisters off the streets. As always, feedback, dailydetroit@gmail.com or 313-789-3211. I'm Jer Stays, and let's get started. Joining me at the studio in Tech Town are a pair of people. Of course, Fletcher Sharp, welcome back.
Yeah, of course. Always here to talk about stuff.
Stuff and things.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some important stuff and things to talk about. Our guest is Laura Chavez. She is the president and CEO of the Southwest Detroit Business Association. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. There's so many things to talk about with Southwest, but this is a specific issue that's happening not just there, not just in the city of Detroit, not just in Metro Detroit, but across Michigan. I think it's something that we need to open a good discussion on, and that is the use of whippets. It's been in the news lately. Mm-hmm. These canisters. If you remember, there was that fire in Clinton Township, and things went haywire, to say the least. And I think it brought a spotlight on a section of inhalant, of drug use that is actually, I've been looking at the statistics, amazingly rampant in the United States, and that the Detroit area is kind of a hub for. Mm-hmm. And that is the use of whippet canisters to get high. And as somebody who has lived in the city a long time, there are times where you'll just see like a pile of them sometimes. I went back and saw that at one point they had found 25,000 whippet canisters on the streets of Detroit as part of a cleanup, which is bananas to me.
Yeah, it is.
So the state is enacting a new law around this, but there is so much more to this story because, I'll be honest, I've talked to a lot of people about whippets over the years. I think there is a misconception about them and their impacts, right? I think there are a lot of people who are like, oh, it's a party thing and, quote unquote, it's safe or whatever. But I think the data doesn't show that.
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of data, and of course I'm not a medical professional, but there's a lot of data that kind of supports the fact that obviously there are long-term effects for people that use whippets for recreational use or use it on a regular basis, neurological damage, and then it can be used as a gateway because, sometimes you start one way and it only gets you high for so long and you want something more. The smaller inhalants only last seconds, right? And so that's when you're saying you see cartridges everywhere, it's usually those smaller ones. And then when you buy the bigger party size canisters, that one can last you a little bit, but at the same time, it's pretty expensive, right? And so you're trying to figure out, how do I continue to stay high? And so there's a lot of neurological damage that can be caused from this, brain damage, as well as different things that you're trying to do as far as even communicating. There's all different things that it can cause, yes.
Yeah, so people know we're talking about laughing gas or nitrous oxide.
Correct.
And it's often used in a medical situation, but it's also used to power things like whipped cream canisters, or if you're working at a craft cocktail bar to add some bubbly or whatever. But there can be a lot of impacts, great and small. On background, I was talking to a doctor with the show, and they were talking about how there's even the possibility, because it causes a B12 deficiency, to have spinal degeneration.
Correct.
So there are some pretty big things here that I just don't think a lot of people around party culture or things, they don't think about that. And these being so accessible, especially to kids, opens up a lot of doors for things. Fletcher?
Yeah, I mean, my first experience in knowing what a whippet was just knowing it was nitrous oxide and kind of thinking I've heard that before. I know Propel stuff, and it's oh, Fast and Furious. They put nitrous oxide in their cars fly off buildings into other buildings. And I'm maybe I'm not the smartest guy, but maybe you don't put that inside your body. Maybe that's not good for you, because if it's making cars, shoot flames, maybe it's going to do something to your body and your nervous system that it really shouldn't be doing. And then seeing the stats of what happens next, it's kind of horrifying that people are oh, it's just a party thing. And then, you see someone who might have start doing it before, and then you see them a few years later, and their body just changes at such a rate where they become almost unrecognizable. And I think the part, to me at least, that makes it look like it's a fun thing is oh, someone's kind of in a little zombie dreamy state, but no, that's their body just being a husk of what it was. And like it's really shocking to like to hear the number of canisters they found. Like lets you know like that it's really, really a problem. It's something that needs to be addressed and taken care of as quickly as they can.
Nationally, it's in the neighborhood of 12 million people who have used it over the age of 26. Laura, can we talk a little bit about how you came to be interested in this? Because like you run a business association. How did this intersection happen?
What happened was, I will say wholeheartedly that it's a coalition, right? And so it's a lot of different organizations and community stakeholders that came together during the pandemic and saw these canisters just littering Southwest Detroit streets. And we own 2 parking lots. And so we would find where people would just literally dump out, hundreds of canisters right in our parking lot. And so at first we didn't even know what it was. And then we started to become familiar with it. And as we became familiar with it, we started to see, what is this? What is it doing? Who's using it? And it was surprising to us enough that it was a lot of young people that were doing it, especially children. They're readily available in your local gas station, dollar stores, sex shops, smoke shops. And there's no stigma attached with going into the store and purchasing this canister. Because they're readily available, a young person can go in, purchase this canister, get high. And when we think about our community, yes, we are Southwest Detroit Business Association, but we have to also think about our youth, right? And if we don't invest in our youth and take health and wellness as a serious step, then what will we have as a community? If our whole generation is, getting high and as you say, a husk of the person that they once were, we end up with a community that can't function, and we want to have a community that thrives.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like you said, it's not like someone's walking in a store and they're like, I want to buy a needle and I want to buy this. And then you're like, hey, no, it's like, I might want to buy a whipped cream canister. I might want to buy this one thing. And you're just like, sure, whatever, like happy, take it, sure. And then someone's taking that and you thinking they're using it for the proper usage. And then you look up and it's like, no, we're using it to do whippets. And it's like, it's really hard to stop that because you can't just say no one gets whipped cream canisters because like that's, I think a lot of people, especially those in like ice cream companies, would be like, no. It's hard to believe, and just to see how it goes from there, it's like hard to just believe and then grasp from that point forward because you think you're helping someone do something positive and you turn around and it's like, actually, we're going to use this for something else.
Yeah. So about this legislation, is it doing what you want it to do, or is this the legislation that you were envisioning?
So it is a good step, right? There's been a couple steps that have already been enacted prior to this. So there was an age restriction put on the purchase of these nitrous oxide canisters. Not to say that the enforcement is always there, but we've been lucky in our community specifically that the 4th Precinct is part of this coalition. And we have Officer Kellogg, Commander Holderbaum, and all the neighborhood policing officers that really support us in this effort. So with our community, we have really good enforcement on it. However, we can't say that that's statewide or on a national level. But in addition to that, this was a step to help prevent the sale of the paraphernalia that's used to use the laughing gas, if you will, to bust the canister open and actually inhale it. And so the canisters themselves are not illegal. And the little canisters, there's no legislation against the sale of that because they are FDA regulated because there are actual uses
really
for
important,
them.
Yeah, good
Correct,
uses for them.
right.
Yeah.
The thing is that you have predatory vendors that are out there stocking their shelves with 500 and 1,000 canisters and selling, 100 a day, which you're not selling 100 canisters of whipped cream a day. There's no reason for that, right? Unless, Starbucks is going.
If you are, you're doing a wholesale order. Right. Like if you're a restaurant group or something like that.
Correct. Like Starbucks, that stuff like that. But the gas station shouldn't be having shelves stocked with them. And we've gone in and talked to the gas station, owners or the clerks and we'll say, why are you stocking your shelves with them? They're like, because it's a really great seller, and so you have that. Then we have really good retailers in our community, which I'll say a lot of the supermarkets, and they say we refuse to stock our shelves with them, but in the same note, they'll say that their whipped cream canisters that they sell are being now used and tipped and used in their aisles and sometimes just being trashed in the aisles. So it is truly a problem,
And that speaks to even deeper problems, because if you're at the point where you're like getting high in the supermarket aisle, I feel like there's something going on.
Yeah.
Something is not going right for you if you aren't even making the purchase. You're like, I'm just going to take this and just whatever, I'm out of here. It's scary because, again, like if it's like, someone's going into looking for a certain paraphernalia or something, it's not great, but like they're going in for whipped cream canisters or something else. And it's like not even making the purchase or just using it and leaving it. Yeah, this has given me the shivers.
Now, over the years, I've seen these canisters on the streets of Detroit. But as this event in Clinton Township showed, this is a regional and a statewide problem. So I imagine you've dealt with some of that even beyond the borders of the SBA.
Again, this legislation is on a state level. So when we think about Southwest Detroit, yeah, that's our name, but our footprint is impacting so much more than Southwest Detroit. It's a statewide legislation, but it's a national level and it's on a global level. And so the reality is that we want to help, set the standard for what different states, maybe even different countries start to implement so that we can hold some of the vendors responsible for this. And we need the vendors to actually be held accountable for, mass producing and distributing these type of canisters. There was a recent article where it described the fact that we have 500 containers, right now that we've collected, the larger party size containers, and we're looking to have safe transport and safe recycling of those canisters. And we've been lucky to have a partner of Ideal Group and Dave Miller to be able to help us to transport them so that they can be safely recycled on the Hazardous Waste Day at the City of Detroit. And we're happy that we have partners like that. But, when we're going out there and we're collecting, just like that explosion, you never know what could happen because some of those canisters aren't bled completely of the nitrous oxide. And so, when you think about that, there's a lot of safety, security measures that need to be put into special handling with these type of things, and if they're sold at a gas station, think of an explosion that could happen in your local gas station. If you have 500 canisters just stacked on your, in your store shelves.
Well, let's say something happens at that gas station because, gasoline's flammable.
Exactly.
And that gets to the building.
Yeah.
What that could be. It could be a smaller version of what happened in Clinton Township. Mm-hmm. Now, do you have anything to share around the, back at home, right? If somebody's worried about their family, if they're trying to think about what to do in their community, what are some things kind of look for to think about action points?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great question. And so we do a lot of education around what whippets are because one of the biggest things is parents need to know what they're looking for, right? And they don't know what they're looking for. We have different workshops, and sometimes, the 4th Precinct has done a phenomenal job on doing educational workshops and partnering with us and the coalition at large so that we can definitely let parents know what to look for. Also kind of giving different types of articles and different type of prints so that people see them. We take them to community events so they see the canisters and they know what they are. We have different opportunities where we go out into the community and we're having, one-on-one discussions at schools, at community centers, at local recreation centers. The education component is truly essential in the work that we're doing with the coalition. So it's not just the cleanup, it's the education and then the legislation. And then the careful recycling and handling of those canisters once we have collected them as well.
Are there some signs that maybe parents could look for or people that you're close to somebody?
I think that, we touched on it earlier, that zombie-like effect, right? And I think that that's one of the big things that, you know what your child is doing, and you know how your child, your children, and when you start to see them kind of zombied out, there's something going on, and it's really important as parents that we ask questions. I'm a mom of a 15-year-old son, and, questions are really important. We got to be asking these questions and not ignoring, what we see happening right in front of us. And so that's definitely key for sure.
What are some of the next steps going forward?
One of the things, again, as we said, that we do have a big collection that we've already collected of canisters, and we're right now working with Ideal Group and trying to really help out to get them to the hazardous waste pickup. And so we're going to definitely transport them. In addition to that, we want to continue to have partnerships that help us with the regular cleanup, but it has to be something that we got to have a strategic plan around it because we can't just take trucks and just take them to hazardous waste. There has to be actual action, actual plan that the city gets around us and helps us to do this. Because again, it's not just a Southwest issue. Correct. And that's the thing is that we got to have a consistent plan of action so that we can work to make sure that we can actually eliminate it from our community. Of course, the goal would be to hold some of these predatory vendors responsible and not allow them to sell the amount of canisters that they are selling. And, so there's a lot of different factors. And again, the education component will continue to go on just as long as they're out there, because that's going to be an ongoing effort. We'd like to continue to do more cleanup, but right now, until we are able to safely transport and recycle or destroy these canisters in a safe manner, we're not going to do any more cleanup efforts because we don't want to just store them anywhere. We don't want another episode of what happened.
could they do?
Yeah, I think that that's a really great question. And one of the things that we've noticed is that, I use the term predatory, and I know that maybe sounds like a really bold word, but the reality is that you won't go to Bloomfield Hills and find those gas stations with store shelves filled with whippets, right? It's in low to moderate income areas. And so when you think about that, it is predatory because you're going and you're specifically targeting this youth community, these people that don't have a lot, and you're already, putting them at risk even more. And because there is no regulation behind it, then you have what you have in our community right now.
Predatory is the right word. It's choosing on people who don't have other recourse and giving them no other option just to use this, and as a result, it makes a bigger need, which then goes from the smaller canisters to the larger ones, and then that's when you go from being the person you were to like the zombie walking around. And yeah, that predatory, I think, is the perfect word choice.
Thank you.
The thing I think about with this too is that, this seems to be something that also impacts other people. I know that there's a lot of people out there who go, hey, well, if you're going to do something to yourself, it's one thing, but there's the trash issue, there's the explodables issue, there's the leftovers, there's all kinds of other things with this, the health effects that make this a little bit different than some things,
Correct. And then there's the long-term effect and who's the family member that's going to care for you when you are now a shell of the person that you once were.
And that's the thing. Mm-hmm. When I talk to folks, and I've talked to folks over the years, there is like no comprehension in the mass public that that's a possibility. At least that's my experience. I don't know about you, Fletcher.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just from the standpoint of like, well, if someone's going to do something else, it's not really my problem. And it's like, you don't think about the fact that while they're doing something else, it's not only affecting them, it's affecting their family, it's affecting their friends. Say they decide that they think they're well enough to like get in a car and drive. It's affecting the public safety because now
Absolutely.
This is someone who's not totally, there, operating maybe a forklift, operating a car, maybe operating just a bike, putting themselves in harm's way that like now, like maybe you're driving perfectly and someone just stumbles in the middle of the street. Now you then have to make a decision what you're going to do that you shouldn't have to be making at all if this thing didn't happen. It's one of those like butterfly flaps its wings and somewhere else a mountain crumbles moments. And it's
the echo effect. That's what I refer to it as, an echo effect. So you're doing one thing, but then it's, so much bigger than what you just did.
And it's really unfortunate that like these steps need to be made. You would think that people could just read the literature and be like, oh yeah, this makes total sense. But I mean, I'm glad that someone is definitely putting the steps behind there to try to do something because something needs to be done about it for sure.
Well, I think that Southwest Detroit is a real resilient community, and we stick together. The fact that it is a coalition, there's a lot of different people coming together and see the need to come together and do the work. And obviously, with the work as a nonprofit, funding is always essential. But in addition to that, we're thankful to have partners in our community that say, this is important to me, and so I care about it, and I'm going to be a part of this, and I want to help you guys out with it. So I appreciate you both, Jared and Fletch, to be able to, come and talk to us and bring me into this conversation, because just as you said, the idea that it's just so little, it's just so minute. What's 2 seconds of this going to do to me? But the reality is there's so many long-term effects that can happen, and there's all these other facets that now are affected, especially in a community that's so tight-knit like Southwest Detroit.
If people want to know more or support your work, what can they do?
They can go to southwestdetroit.com. That's our website. Myself and Brandy Watts. Brandy Watts is right now the person that's chairing a lot of the campaign. And then me, I'm out there in the community, but you can always come to 7752 West Verner Highway. That's where we're located. You can come on site. You can ask the 4th Precinct. Commander Holderbaum has been really instrumental in going to these Senate hearings with us, as well as Officer Kellogg. There's different workshops and different informational sessions that we all have. And if you check our website, we'll definitely show the next one that we're having. But follow us. You can go to our Facebook page, Instagram, and we really appreciate the support. Obviously, if you believe in the campaign and the work that we're doing, always we're accepting funds to help support that.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time on Daily Detroit. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thanks so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. Also, thanks to our members on Patreon who support our project, patreon.com/dailydetroit. With that, I'm Jared Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.